All right. Again, I'm on page 281 in the book. I don't want to read from the book, but the author makes a very important point in the first sentence. So far, we've learned to create and format web pages, but we haven't cared a lick up until the example we just did about sizing and how they look when you change the size around. All right. Again, yeah, more and more websites are being accessed on mobile devices. All right. So that's what this chapter is about. They're going to talk first about the three components of responsive design. You've already been introduced to two of them. All right. One of them is a fluid layout versus fixed. If you remember, we looked at that yesterday. So that's using percentages versus using pixels. The second one we started going over today, and that's the use of media queries. The third one is to be able to dynamically size your images. Those three things are the keys to responsive website design. All right. So as it says, we'll talk fixed fluid again, how to convert fixed to fluid, other units of measure. We've talked about some of these, sizing fonts. I mean, if I say that if I say that I want something to be 4 rem and I want to display it on here, I might be able to see a letter. That's not going to work very well. So as it shrinks down, you may find that as your site morphs down, so to speak, oh, this is great. I got to put all this text on the front page and I got to put this picture on, but you don't have room for it anymore. All right. Then, like I said, there's a whole section in here, notice, on media queries. And then finally, they end up with a web page that actually is created with responsive website design. So again, it is 10:10. I'm going to go for 5 minutes and then just pause this. All right. So again, 3 components to start. A responsive design uses fluid layouts rather than fixed, meaning again, it uses percentages. It does not use pixels. You will see that on the picture on the next page. Secondly, as it says, you can use media queries to adjust the appearance of your site depending on the media that's being used. And third, as it says, it should use images whose size change along with the size of their containing elements. So a picture on here is not going to look the same as a picture on here. All right. So this is what you're shooting for. Okay, that could be a desktop or a laptop. There's a phone portrait. There's a phone landscape. So these again are the 3 components. I'm not going to read them again. You've already heard me say this. All right. So they break it down. At first they talk about how you can test for responsive design. Guess what? It's what I just showed you. All right, you can bring it up in Chrome. Right, the F12 key is supposed to work too, rather than right mouse clicking and choosing inspect. It sometimes does, sometimes doesn't. I've had people tell me, 2 people sitting next to one another, mine works, mine doesn't. I don't know why, but the right mouse click and choosing inspect always works, regardless of what kind of browser you're using. That should always work. All right. And we've looked at this stuff before, but the new thing is, again, when you come in there, it's over here because they've already opened it, but it was choosing that second little box or icon or whatever that was, and then it shows you. So you can see this is how it will look in an iPhone 6. 50% it says online, and notice this isn't clicked, so it's in portrait and not landscape. One thing about this, it's not really important or that important, but I just want to mention this to you, that when we went here and we right mouse clicked and we chose inspect, etc., like this, and you look at these different types, most people will tell you they don't care how it looks on an iPhone 5 anymore. If somebody's got that old phone, probably they're not going to be doing much with it anyway. So sometimes this stuff will look good on everything, but it's fine here, but when you get it down to an iPhone 5, it might not look good. All right. There. So they tell you how you can do that, again, using Chrome. It's different if you're in Edge or if you're in Firefox. You do the same thing, but you have different buttons or different something that you've got to click. Other than that, it's the same thing. All right. So again, for implementing fluid design, again, the whole key, look at the picture here on 287. Notice fixed width, and then you have to figure out the percentage. All right. How do you know what the percentage is? Well, if you're saying that the width is going to be 960 pixels, for example, 960 pixels is that a whole screen. When you're figuring this out, this is the percentage of your screen. All right. And they give you formulas and stuff in here that you can use. All right. A fixed layout uses absolute measurements. A fluid uses percentages. I can't say that enough times. So they give you this formula here on 288 that you can use to go from one to the other. In fact, they're going to give you a formula later that's going to tell you how to go from like pixels to rems. And they're going to say, take it and divide it by 16. Where have you heard that before? All right, because that's what I mentioned to you the other day. So again, they do this one with percentages. And I'm not going to do it right now, but I told you this, I've shown you this. You've got all the examples in this book. So if it's next week and you're taking the test and you totally space out, I would bring those up and take a look at something if that can possibly help you. All right. So this is the formula. I'm not going to read to you. It's right there. Again, these other units, I'm going to give you a break right now. This is new. View height right now, if this view height, my view height basically when you look at it is 100%. You can see the whole screen. If I cut it off right here, let's say, where this was, you didn't see this anymore, it was my background, for example, that would be a view height of 95 then. Does that make sense? So there's a view height and there's a view width. And what they say is, imagine that you cut your screen up into 100 chunks, both horizontally and vertically. Each one of those chunks is one view height or one view width. All right. Again, the best way to play with that is to look at the examples by far. All right. Before we go on to how to size fonts, it's 10:16. Let's come back let's make it 10:26. All right. We'll finish this up and then we'll look at the homework. All right. So we left off on page 292 here, how to size fonts. They talked about fonts back in chapter 4, and there's a little bit more on them here. And again, notice that's what I mentioned to you before. Now, notice M is divided by 16 just like rem is. But remember, if you change the font size with M's and then you've got something after you change the font size, it's going to be different. In other words, when you use M's, it's not always based off of 16. When you use rems, it is always based off of 16. All right? I just think it's easier to use rems. You may agree with that. You may not agree with that. You might say, I don't even know enough right now to know if I agree or disagree. Well, then when you work with it, when you start creating your own stuff, all right, you'll have probably a lot better idea. Scaling images. Now, this is kind of important because this is one of these three things we have not talked about. As it says, as the width of an element in a fluid design changes, you'll typically want the width of the images to change as well, to keep in sync. In other words, you want to be able to scale your images. And it says figure 8.7 on the next page here shows this. So this picture, I mean, imagine that right here. So let's just say that was its size. I'm putting my phone up to it, which is a pretty big phone, and it's probably taking up 3/4 of the size of my phone. So I wouldn't want that. All right, there could be very little to no text along there with that. So typically when you do this, notice what you typically put. A max width of 100%. Now, one thing about this, you'll notice that in both of these, whether you put the CSS for the image or CSS that limits an image, you don't have to typically do anything with the height. If you adjust the width, typically the height will scale itself accordingly with whatever way the width has been scaled. All right. So in the first case, you're just basically telling it to use as much room in the current thing that it's using as it possibly can. All right. But no more. And in this case, you're telling it to use 100% until it gets to 400 pixels. And if whatever your media is that you're looking at it through gets bigger or wider than that, just keep it at 400. So as they say here, because I'm just spending a little more time on this because we haven't discussed this one before. To create a scalable image, remove any height and width attributes. Don't put them in the HTML. Don't put them in the CSS. Again, since it's fluid, all right, notice in both cases we're using percentages. Now, if you do want to put a max size, yeah, that you do put in the CSS as they show there. So next they show you this page with fluid design. Now again, you may look at that and say, man, that's really ugly. I don't like their choice of colors. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't particularly find it appealing. And this color here that they're using is a little darker version of this. I don't like that, but that's just me. You know, other people might look at it, oh no, it looks great. But you know what? This also, if this really is, I don't know if it is, it probably isn't, but if this really was the San Joaquin Valley, maybe the people there decided on the colors. All right. You'll also notice the way that this looks. This is a little wider, so you notice how it goes down to 2 lines. See that? Some people wouldn't like that, so how could you get around that? Well, probably if you remove the A, then there might be enough room if it just said become member. But the other ways of doing it, you could just shrink down the font size. All right, if that was really a big issue. So as it says, the web pages uses a fluid layout. Both of the images on the page are scalable. The font size are coded in M's. And as the width is reduced, it becomes more difficult to use. As it says, to fix this, boom. What they go into next? Media queries. All right. So you now, at least hopefully, understand the concept of media queries. Next week, we will go over towards the end of the week, chapters 9 and 10, and I'm going to probably try to create something where we will do something and we'll play with it with Flexbox, and something else where we'll play with it with Grid. And then we'll go into the chapter. I think it helps more to do stuff like that. And then when we get into chapter 11 and we do forms, we're going to create a form before we even look at the chapter, just so you get a sampling of how this stuff is used. All right. So how to control the mobile viewport? Well, you kind of know this now. All right. You don't want this. That should make sense to everybody. Do you want this? I don't know. I would say probably when you get to a certain width on a different device, you may want it to just be 1 wide and have it stack. All right. You see that a lot. So these are the properties. I'm not going to read any of them to you. All right. But you now, I at least believe, have a really good grasp of width and height, and of min width, min height, max width, and max height. Now they explain finally what that meta tag is all about. All right. So when it says there, initial scale equals 1, what that's saying is use 100% of the screen. All right. And when they say content width equal device width, they're saying adjust it based on what you're looking at it through, whether it's this, or something else. So coding media queries, you've already seen this now. Now we didn't use device width, device height, orientation. I do want to mention these. So let's look at them. First of all, notice At media, you can say in there, for example, screen, which means apply that to your screen. But for example, if you were printing it, you might have a different media queries for print. You with me? So depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it. All right. There is screen, there's print, and there's one other, I don't remember what it is, but it's something like for speech or something like that. I don't remember exactly, like I said, what it is. So width, the width of the viewport, height, the height of the viewport, device width, device height, the width of the display area of the device, and the height of the display area. All right. Typically, they're just about the same thing. That's why I don't think with those. And orientation should make sense. So again, they show stuff in here. There's at media only screen, and so max width, so that's going to handle 0 to 767 pixels. The next one that's in there is going to handle everything from 480 pixels to 767 pixels. All right, I'm not going to go through any of this stuff on here because that's what we just did. Here's some common media queries. Well, some of these are going to look familiar. Now, they may not have the same numbers we had. I went out and used the internet because I wanted the latest and greatest. All right, as far as what was out there. But the ideas are the same. As it says, one way is to start with larger devices and work your way down. Another way is to start with the smallest devices and work your way up. That's what I did. Now this Slick Nav plugin, okay, what this does is it's one way when this is your menu that would normally be a horizontal menu. When it gets to be a certain width, it drops down to vertical, or it doesn't show at all typically, but it makes this. These things that you see here, these bars, this is known as a hamburger menu. Somebody decided it looked like a hamburger. I don't know, I didn't. But you click on it, and then your menu items show, but they show like this. Now, that's one way you can do it, is to use this plugin. And I believe you'll be asked to do it on one of your homeworks. All right, there's other ways of doing it, and with some applications, this is much more automated than what they show right here. So they end the chapter with a page that uses responsive design. So this is how this last page should look like this in here. But if I bring it up and either try to bring it up on my phone, or if I use those emulators that I showed you, they should look like this. All right. As it says, it uses a fluid layout, it uses scalable images, it uses media queries. They give you the HTML. Not a lot of new stuff in here. It's pretty much the same stuff they've been working with previously. They're showing you what's new. Then they show you the CSS. And they will have the media queries in here someplace. There they are. And that's it for that. Now, we're going to go take a look at the homework in just 1 second. All right? So when we go over the next chapter in here next week, this is the end of section 1 of the book. 8 chapters. Section 2 is 2 chapters. 2. It's only, so far we're up to page 321 already. The next 2 chapters, which make up the next section, are only collectively about 60 to 70 pages. The reason they're in their own section is this is where CSS is moving to try to make it easier for you to lay things out. All right, so again, in chapter 9, we will talk about Flexbox. which is more or less a two-dimensional XY way of doing things. And in Chapter 10, we will talk about CSS Grid. All right? And we will be going through those. So again, like I said, we're already up 300. We're not halfway through the book, but after 1 week, pretty far. All right? So I want to go back then. And to get out of this, I think I showed you this yesterday, but well, that's nice. It's stuck. You can just type in the word exit. Okay. All right. Now, when we look in here, I'm grabbing the same thing you guys have. All right. Guess what you're going to have to do? When you do your first assignment, notice there already is a Git folder in here. All right. You'll probably want to remove this Git folder and create your own. Did you hear me? The easiest way to do that is literally just highlight the folder and hit delete. Then go through the same stuff we did before where you'll right mouse click and you'll do the Git this, etc. All right. And I think because right now it's probably set up for my machine, not for your individual machines. And you also notice that it looks a little bit lighter and it starts with a period. That's a special kind. You know, when stuff starts with what doesn't start with a letter, it's usually some special system type of thing. Usually it starts with a $sign or a period or an underscore or whatever, depending on the software that you're using. All right. So I'm going to come in here. This is exactly what you have. And I'm going to start with labs here. All right. Now, here's your HTML labs. There's your JavaScript labs. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to open up each one of these, the Halloween project and the shape project. Okay. Now, when I open up the Halloween project, this is the starter for the Halloween project. So if I open this up, that's what you get. Not really what I call a whole heck of a lot. All right. But if I open up the PDF, this is the homework you're supposed to do for each one of these chapters. You'll notice if you look here, it starts with Halloween 3. So there is no homework for Chapter 1 or Chapter 2. Everybody hear me? So what you're expected to do is when you do this homework here for Chapter 3, whatever it is, all right, you've got that information in here. I will tell you, this is like your starter stuff. You'll want to probably copy it for each chapter. You won't want to do it in here because you might have to go back and do the starter stuff. All right. But what you can do if you want to is you can copy everything except the PDF, I guess, and then put it in there. Because all that's in there right now is an empty HTML file. So what will be expected, and I didn't tell you guys this before, I was thinking about it, it's Friday. Monday is going to be a homework day. I'm not going to say a word. You get 4 hours to come in here and work on this stuff, and I'll be here if you've got questions. All right? Tuesday, I'm going to give you basically the equivalent, I'll probably create it Monday while you're working, of a pretest. And I'll give you a couple of hours to work on it, and then we'll go over it as a class. Wednesday will be your test then, next Wednesday. I think that's the 31st or the 1st, probably the 1st. Thursday, we'll go over Chapter 9. Friday, we'll go over Chapter 10. Remember, a week from Monday, the 6th, is Labor Day. There's no classes. That Wednesday, when you come back, will be your next test. All right? So, yeah, we do go through this section fairly quickly. Because, like I said, we're supposed to try to do it as much as possible in around 20 days. But when we slow it up a lot when we get to the JavaScript. I have no idea if any of you three here have got any experience whatsoever, doing any kind of programming. But I have to assume you don't. Now, if you do, it's going to do nothing but help you. All right? So you will be working both on those. And when you look at this, so I'm going to, again, bring this one up again. When you get done, it's probably going to look a lot like this. You don't have to do most of that typing. There'll be a folder in there that's called text, kind of like the folder I gave you. There'll be this will be in there. You might have to type in the Halloween stuff. I don't remember how this is, and you'll have to do some formatting. So I know what this should look like when you get done. When I grade it, I look through it. And if I might pick out, I mean, if there's 10 things to do, even with 5 of you, that's 50 things to look at. I might say, okay, with Mason here, I'm going to look at these 5. With Donald, I'm going to look at these 5, etc. But I also take a look at the look and feel, and I can tell, oh, you left this off. So Michael turns his in, and there's no image there. Well, you'd lose points for that. So this is a screenshot of what it's supposed to look like. So I will expect, like I said, that, and I'm going to even be a little more lenient because we went through, you'll have homework for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 6 chapters. So I'm going to say that the day we come back, the 7th, I'm going to expect all of that to be done. All right, that's 3 through 7. Now also, there's another one that's called Shape Up. It's for a mythical fitness center. Notice it again starts in chapter 3. All right, and you're going to find a lot between these two. There'll be a lot of repetition. That's how you learn. All right, and I'm going to move this up, way up. Oh, to, let's see, about 14. This is what we'll be moving towards. So you can see what's all in here. Again, we've got a header up here. We've got a navigation center or section. We've got 2 different columns. We actually even embedded a video. We've got a footer in here, etc. You are walked through everything that you have to do in here. Not to be funny, cruel, insulting, and all. It's not rocket science. Now, when you are working on this stuff, if something doesn't make sense, or if there is an image missing or whatever, I'm sorry, it's your responsibility to let me know. Don't just not do it and turn it in. Well, I didn't have that. All right. I go through and I grade these things, but I'm not going to lie to you. I don't want to go back and regrade them. All right. I got plenty to do as it is. All right. So that will be what you'll be doing as far as your labs go. In addition to labs, you get homework. So I'm going to go into the homework folder. And you'll notice HTML short exercises. These start with chapter 3. This is working with that same thing, that San Joaquin thing, I believe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But you're going to be doing very similar stuff to what's in the book and in the other assignments. I'm going to try to make sure at a minimum. Now, we may break this rule next week, I'm telling you, because we've got to pretest that one day. But at a minimum, you're going to get at least 1 day a week that's going to be dedicated just 4 hours for homework. Now, can you get everything done during that time? Maybe not 6 chapters, but most of the time it's going to be 2 or 3. You probably can. All right. Any questions on anything that we've gone over today? So we have now looked at the homework and looked at the labs. When you're doing this the first time, and if you're confused, again, so what I'm telling you is I want to make sure that you get this. Let's say that I want to do the homework for chapter 1, okay, for a Halloween project. So that's homework. So I probably in here, there is no homework for chapter 1, chapter 3, all right? I might come in here and just make 2 folders and call one of them Halloween. If I'm spelling that right, I don't know. And the other one, I think, was Shape Up. All right, so I've now got those. Then I can come back here and I can grab this built-in thing, this thing right here, this folder, just highlight all of them. I could have just done it and called it Halloween Project. It wouldn't matter. Do a Control-C to copy, go back to chapter 3, go to my Halloween, and paste that in. And then I could do the same thing with the Shape Up. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, You're probably not going to want to do that exactly like that every time, because sometimes what they'll do is you'll use the chapter 4 one and you'll build onto that in chapter 5. So you'll take everything in your chapter 4 and you'll copy it over to your chapter 5. Does that make sense? All right. Again, when you're working on this stuff, if something doesn't make sense, just ask. All right. I have actually gone through, not from this version of the book, but from version 3. It was the same projects. I did every project. They all do work. There shouldn't be any surprises in any of these. All right, just so you know that. So if there are no other questions, you've got an hour to start working on it right now. All right. I'm going to have to go to the office for a couple of minutes, but I'll literally be back in about 5 minutes.
So I just wanted to confirm, but so chapters 3 through 8, I guess, homework.
Yes.
And labs, those are going to be due.
Yes.
Thursday
They'll be due the Tuesday we come back from break, which is September 7th.
Okay, so not next week.
That's correct.
And then the Halloween shape-up's the lab, not the homework.
Yes. So both of those will be due on that Tuesday. Yeah. When you get
3 through 8.
Yes. When you get them done, again, you will be taking your version of this thing, all right, making it your own Git, and you will be pushing that. Now, what some people did last year was some people would go and push it every time they put in another assignment. And other people waited until they had all of 3 through 8 done for both of them, the labs and the homework, and just pushed it at once. That's probably easier, but if you don't want to do it that way, you don't have to. All right. But also remember, because I gave you that before, I probably don't have it up here anymore. Let's see if I do. Get rid of that. Need that. Don't need that. There. Remember to give me an invite. So if it's due Tuesday and I look Tuesday, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but let's just say Nick forgot to give me an invite. I'm probably, if I go home and start to look at these Tuesday night, I'm going to send him an email saying, hey, you didn't give me an invite. I can't look at your stuff. Right? Any questions? Any other questions? Yeah.
This might be a silly one, but are we just supposed to email the invite to you, or?
When you follow this, it's basically when you're into GitHub, it's just, you're going to have to click a couple links, and then it'll give me one.
Cool.
All right.